Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And I'm going to make this announcement. Obviously, I appreciate everybody who likes this, shares this interview. Obviously, I want a lot of people to know about this. And I have 2 links down below. Actually, 3 links. The Kickstarter to Sister Mercy is up there, which is for my returning guest, Corey Hardiman, who is the creator and writer of Sister Mercy. And before I dive into all of that, I also have a Cash App link and a Buy Me a Coffee. So if you like what you hear and you want to support indie, that's the best 2 ways how to support indie beyond sharing and liking this video. So obviously, welcome to the show, man. It's been, 3 times now? 3 times?
The third one. Yep, absolutely.
So obviously, there's a lot going on. I still need to back Sister Mercy. I'm going to get to it. I've been a little bit swamped writing the 4 interviews I got this week. I'm going to do it as soon as I am off. I'm still trying to figure out which covers I want, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, and you're going to convince me of the other 2 somewhere in this interview. But what is Sister Mercy for those who are hearing about this for the first time? Because I want everybody to be caught up on what this comic is about. I know we spoke about it twice with poor lighting. I'm going to just state that.
Yeah, that's all fixed this time. Sister Mercy is a post-apocalyptic story about a schizophrenic nun that hears the voice of God, who is leading her on a hunt through this post-apocalyptic wasteland filled with undead and mutants and every threat imaginable. It's a bit of Joan of Arc mixed with Mad Max, mixed with A Beautiful Mind.
And there's a lot of stuff going on. And obviously, to go even further into this, she is not bothering anybody. She's living with her mom / the head nun, and she's doing all right with her schizophrenia. And, obviously, for those who don't know, a lot of people who have been schizophrenic have gone into the church, and they tend to do very well in the church. And so, obviously, sort of the world is in a weird place in this comic as well, where half the world's technology is destroyed. The other half is sort of in effect. And as I stated, she's minding her own business. And then, the Catholic Church, and I think it's the Catholic Church, sort of comes and storms her tiny little house, just the 2 of them, and take away the head nun. And that sort of builds out the story. So what prompted, what's going on in the world? Because that's something that I think is very cool about this story in particular. And what drew me to this story is more the world versus the Catholic Church. But I love when we make fun of religion.
I would say it's a version of the Catholic Church for sure. It draws heavily on it. And as the series goes on deeper, you actually see where exactly it goes. It draws a lot from Catholic prophecy, which is where the head villain, the Black Pope, Petrus Romanus, is actually based upon an old Jesuit prophecy about the very final Pope of the Apocalypse, right? So I'm drawing heavily from that. But it's not the Catholic Church as you would know it today by any means. Well, some may argue that, but but it's definitely different. And they're the power center of the world right there. They're in control.
And the reason why I bring it up this way is that obviously we are dealing with, religion, and you have studied a great deal of religion. So you're not just shooting blindly at this. Obviously there is a lot of research that went into this. Absolutely, and joking around when I say that I like to make fun of religion, obviously I like to criticize religion. I think everything should be criticized, 100%. And there is both sides of this. And so obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. And to even go further into this, so obviously now Sister Mercy is schizophrenic and she's hearing the voice of God, and her house is blown up, and then she's out in the wilderness, and we begin to see that schizophrenia play. And I think it's super important to talk about this because schizophrenia is a very dangerous thing. It's a very sad thing, and I think you really hit on where it's going, and we capture real elements of it. And I think you depict it in a very good way that doesn't downplay it, but also shows the effects that it can have on people.
Well, and to her, it's an everyday part of her life. It's not something out of the norm. It's something that she's come to accept as much as we would accept hearing somebody else. She accepts hearing these voices as very real. There's no doubt in her mind that not only does God exist, but that God is actually her physical father. And that she's basically similar to the Jesus story. She believes she's born of a virgin birth, which in issue 2 turns out to be, elaborated on a bit more. And right, but but as far as she's concerned, everything she sees is 100% real.
And then obviously, there's some stuff that happens, and we as a reader, some things we think are real might not be real. Things that are real, she might not be playing outward. And I'm trying to figure out how to describe it, but we get to see a very violent side of her come out. And it's this embodiment of almost like she finds God giving her strength in, when she's attacked and she almost gets raped, and then she winds up killing her assailant in many ways. And it's a very interesting thing because she's almost embodying the strength of God in a lot of ways, and God is protecting her. And I'm not too sure if that's real or fake, and it's up in the air to some degree as being ambiguous. But even that idea of that, this is a part of her, and then some element of God is a part of her. And maybe she's not schizophrenic, and maybe, God is real.
I did want to leave that intentionally a little bit ambiguous, and it becomes a bit more clear as the series goes on. But I also wanted to make the character of God, I guess you could say, is not just there, giving moral support or anything. He's more of although he does do that as well, he's also sort of like the eye in the sky, kind of like in the Matrix, duck now, take 3 steps to the left. And as long as she follows him, everything should work out all right. But she's stubborn, and sometimes she likes to go her own way too, and it doesn't always work out the best for her.
Yeah, and obviously it gets very violent. I mean, I do want to make this crystal clear. I mean, I think if it wasn't clear yet, if it wasn't clear yet, she gets pretty much gets sexually assaulted. I think that's a pretty safe position. Yep. She kills her assailant very violently, might I add. In a very, very destructive way. It's not a merciful kill, despite the book being called Sister Mercy.
That's right. And on it, though it does have a lot of religious overtones, it is definitely not religious in content. In that regard, it's not. It's definitely for a mature audience. That's for sure. People that aren't easily offended, because it could very easily step on toes.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuckery that goes on in this entire book. It is a good way to describe it. And obviously, going into issue 3, I mean, we have full-on nudity. This is not a book that you should give your 8-year-old to read.
No.
Obviously, there is undead mutants. There's some crazy, like, Skeletor dinosaurs. Obviously, there is elements of the Roman Colosseum that come into play in a lot of cool ways in that regard as well. And obviously, we go into this entire thing with, obviously, for those who know history, the way you sometimes control masses is that you put on entertainment, and that's what the Romans did with the Colosseum, and that's why people fought, and we get some of that in there. Obviously, the church all throughout medieval time and all sorts of the church have been involved in corruption, and we see that emerging in a lot of ways as well. And all Sister Mercy wants is that she just wants her mom back, and she wants to just go on her merry way. And obviously now she's thrown into a much larger world. And so what is that like to write that character and expose her? Because all she's known in her life, from my understanding, is that I'm in this house, I do my daily chores, I pray, and now you're thrown into a whole world, big world, that is filled with good people and bad people and people who have their own agendas. And now she's opposing a very powerful organization, and she possibly might have some allies to do it with.
So she's exploring the world along with the reader, because like you said, she lived a secluded lifestyle with her mother, away from anybody. And it's as she's coming across these new characters and new environments, new threats and challenges, she's encountering them for the first time along with the reader. And every issue, I like to explore the world a little bit farther, show you another little corner, and bring it all together in the end.
And this is something that I like, because I think it is super important to understand that sometimes in stories, the world is already built, and that the reader is thrown into that. Before we went live, we were speaking about DC Comics and the world of Batman. And I think it's safe to say that the world of Batman and the world of Gotham is already built, And then we as a reader, you know, it's safely presumed, unless it's a Batman origin story, that Batman's been doing this for years, and then we're just thrown into a new thread of a story. And so we don't grow with the world. And in your book, we are now experiencing the world for the first time. We have probably a few steps back from Sister Mercy and more of an eye view from it. But we also are saying, hey, we don't know what caused what is known as essentially the reckoning that destroyed half the world. We don't know all this stuff, and we find out all this stuff like she does. And we're like, wait a second, there's a gigantic city, and that this church is corrupt, and that there's corruption even within the corruption of the church to some degree as well. And it's a very nice touch when we're with that character and exploring it versus, you know, having the world already built and then information of the world is being exposed to us. If that makes any sense.
100%, 100%, absolutely. And that's pretty much exactly what I'm going for. I just didn't want to regurgitate post-apocalyptic Mad Max world again. You know what I mean? I wanted to kind of make it my own. And Ricardo has definitely put his touches on it as well. Sometimes Ricardo's my Brazilian artist, does great work. Sometimes we have communication issues, but sometimes that works out for the better because of it, actually. So I love what he does, and I can't wait to reveal to the reader, you know, as I reveal the larger world and the origins of how it got to be the way it is, and behind that, there's so many twists and turns coming. The comic is very cheesecake on the surface. Obviously, there's a lot of boobs, there's a lot of violence, and you know that is definitely to target the audience. At the end of the day, that was all an afterthought. It started with the story and with the character, and it's very, very story and character driven, right? And I like just to think of all of that stuff as just as the icing, you know, that to bring people in.
I'll give you a great quote. So there's a book by Alan Moore called Lost Girls. I don't know if you've read Lost Girls.
No, I haven't. Lost
Girls takes Alice Wonderland, who's 60 years old. You have Wendy, who's in her mid-40s, and you have Dorothy, who's like 20. They're all right now, you have a crazy story in of itself. Alice is a lesbian. Wendy's not happy in her marriage as their son just went off to school, and she's lonely, and her husband is always working. And then Dorothy is a promiscuous little hussy. And I use another word, but I'm being good today. And there's all this lesbian sex and sexual innuendos and all sorts of stuff. And that's sort of how the book is marketed a little bit. But if you took all that stuff out, it's a brilliant story. And that's how I view Sister Mercy. That's what
I'm hoping to accomplish. I don't want to say that's what I'm getting at, but that's what I would love to get at. That is my goal.
And so that's how I view Sister Mercy, where I'm like, great, we have the surface that does X. But if you took all that out, and now we're just dealing with a schizophrenic nun on a journey to go find her mom and uncovering how corrupt and bloodied up and bashful and how fucked up the world is, I mean, you know, you don't need all that stuff, but when you throw that stuff back in there, it adds a different sense of it. Because when I'm reading Lost Girls and there's those sexual innuendos, and even with Sister Mercy, I'm like, okay, this book now is an adult book. I get it instantly, and then all those themes pop up off the top of my head very quickly and happen much quicker. Versus if this book was PG, those themes would take a lot more work just to connect. They don't fire as off as quickly. And so that's why I bring up Lost Girls, because that book really is the perfect example, and I think that's what Sister Mercy is doing.
It's on my reading list now.
So that, and I want to express that, and then obviously, you know, that's something that I think is great. And then obviously, I just want to talk about the Black Bishop and the Black Pope, and because I just love both those names, and I love what they're doing, and I love who they are. And
not Black Bishop, just the Black Pope. There is a bishop character, but he was just the bishop. Black Bishop is actually a comic by somebody else, so I don't want to take credit for that name. But no,
I stand corrected.
Yeah, but the Black Pope, no, he's a great villain, and I look so forward to exploring his backstory. And there is a lot to that. There's so much more story to tell. I can't wait to start getting to the, even though it's this is the issue 4 Kickstarter that's out right now, I still feel like I'm still world building, right? I haven't gotten quite to the twists and the turns. There's some really, really crazy stuff in the store. It's just kind of a slow burn to get there, so it has the proper impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and obviously when you throw a dinosaur into issue 3, you know.
When you turn every page, you don't know what you're going to see, right?
I'm just going to say, I'm not necessarily a big dinosaur fan, but I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was funny. I thought it was a nice cover. And there's a lot of cool stuff that sort of happened in that.
Right.
So I love the fact that, you know, we're not playing in a realistic world the same way that, you know, because this could have been done just in a realistic world in medieval times. And I love how there's some supernatural elements in this as well. And then obviously I want to jump into issue 4 because she hasn't found her mother yet. We don't know really where her mother is. And she's still looking. She's got a few allies, but, you know, and she's dealing with the church and a variety of other problems that sort of popped up. And I'm being ambiguous and I'm being purposely avoiding parts of this because I did read issue 3. I've read issue 2. I read issue 1. Again, I will add, I read them again. So obviously I'm trying not to ruin too much because once I start ruining it, you know, it's all going to hell, which might be where they're at right now, but that's not the point. But she's going to be dealing with a new challenge, and that's the fire-wielding Dane. And so what is this fire-wielding Dane? Who is this person? What is their connection to the church, if they have any? And what can you tell us? Because I don't want to ruin too much, but obviously, you know, if you play with fire, you get burnt.
That's right. No, so far, she's met every challenge pretty much head on. And even though, you know, difficult challenges to say the least, she still overcome them all pretty much without any bumps and bruises. I figured it was about time she came across something that was a bit more threatening, not something that she could take out quite so easily. So the Dane, he's the leader of another separate group that is actually separate from the church, but they have control over the gas. So the church has control over water, provisions, and more other things like that. Whereas, so they basically have a brokered deal with this other small sect to trade for gas, and Mercy kind of comes along right in the middle of it. So I can't say too much more than that without giving it all away.
And so obviously to even jump off of that and get maybe a little into the story and into sort of behind the scenes without giving too much away, you know, obviously when you jump in and you got to swing on with any book on your first issue, you know, world building typically happens second, third issue. And then when you get into the 4th issue, you know, you've now built a fan base. You're trying to bring in new fans, especially on Kickstarter, but you need to start, you know, developing more of a long form story and have challenges. And you can't just have a character that is, you know, completely one-sided. Exactly. And, you know, and so obviously this is where this is going. So what is that like as far as pacing and building that up? Because if you have a character, unless that's the purpose of the book, there's a few comics that can do it. You know, and if you would like the John Cena of the book, be my guest. But hey, he needs the support right now. It's all messed up.
He's having a rough time.
I'm sure Vin Diesel isn't too thrilled with him at the moment. He's not going to be in Fast 10, I can tell you that.
He might be able to get a job as a Mandarin translator. He's got that down pat. You never know.
So yeah, this has got off so deep. This is why this show is rated, you know, NC-17 for a reason. So anyway, it's a miracle I'm not taken off Facebook yet, and YouTube has already demonetized me, so they can't punish me anymore. Hey, I set the trend. Everybody else copied. I want to make that perfectly clear here. But in all seriousness, what is that like bringing in now a villain and an enemy that is tougher to deal with? Because now you have that following. You have a good, you know, 3 issues that build that out. But now you actually need to build a story that, you know, actually means them. Because if she's just beating the shit out of everybody in her pathway straight to the church, there's like, after a while, that's going to get old. You know that's kind of what happened with The Walking Dead in a lot of ways. Absolutely. In a lot of ways, is that it got stale real quick. You know, I would like to see Sister Mercy like 3 inches away from her death. And the reason why I would like to see that is that then she rises back up, and then now it's round 2 of that in issue 5. or that, she loses an arm, but she wins the fight, or that one of her allies dies. Like, something needs to happen that actually forces growth as a character.
You're really going to enjoy the future issues.
She loses an eye. She gets her arm cut off. It turns out that she's a guy. All sorts of possibilities could happen here.
Yeah, this is the issue 4 marks the halfway point of the first story arc. I hope I should be able to tell the first story arc in 8 issues and end in a really good spot. But if there's still enough interest, I would love to write a sequel that is very, 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 very different. But it would still work as a sequel, but vastly different. But that being said, so the first 4 issues was more it's her trying to find her mother, and the last 4 issues really start to culminate into some events, and she gets to where she needs to go. I'm not saying whether or not she finds her mother, but she gets to where she needs to go. Major things happen. There are definitely some character building moments coming up for sure, no doubt about that.
And so I'm not going to press too hard on that, but even going further into Inside Baseball, because I love Inside Baseball. Obviously, one of the things that comics, for those who don't know, usually a story arc is anywhere from 4 to 6. Mm-hmm. In particular, on the indies, it's typically 6 issues is a big story arc, because I don't know how often you release a Kickstarter, monthly wise or yearly.
We've upped it this year. We got 2 this year, so 1 every 6 months. But next year we're hoping to go 3 and get 1 at every 4 months. So the more we do it, the more we're getting used to it, and we're starting to increase the tempo a little bit, right?
You get the question that's about to be asked, is that obviously when you go from do a 6 month and you release every 3 months or every 4 months, obviously it takes you 2 years on 6 issues to get it out. If you do it every quarter, it takes you about 18 months, or I think 18 months, I think, so a year and a half. If you do it every 2 months, obviously it takes you a year. If you do it monthly, which I don't think very few people can do monthly, that is insane to do monthly.
Just trying to fulfill the rewards and get the next one out while having everyone get their first rewards would just be a nightmare on itself.
It would be a disaster. Even doing it every 2 months would be rough. Every 3 months is possible. I've seen it done. And even still, you back a project in. It takes in month 4, you're back in the second project. You didn't get the first project until the end of month 4. It's very interesting. But even that, and I guess where I'm going is that, like, there's a lot of risk when you go to 8 issues, because obviously it extends that a lot longer, and things can happen. People can lose interest. And so what is that like for you from a planning perspective? And obviously you're speeding it up now from going from 2 to 3, which is a big jump. I mean, that's a 33% increase in speed, and obviously reduces risk. But even that, what is that like for you to say, hey, I got to speed this up because I want to get this story completely done in 8 issues, and even to do those extra 2 issues. And it's not even a money position anymore, I think, or a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding issue. It's more of, is my artist going to get booked somewhere? Is my artist going to be called up by GC? That's a big issue now.
I'm very, very lucky in that regard that the previous campaigns have done so well, which have given me the funds to get the next ones coming through faster. So that's been great. And the team that's working to get it together, Fred Marino is doing the coloring. Ricardo Silva is doing the line art. George Vieira is doing the letters. It seems to be their number one focus is Sister Mercy right now, at least. Like I can't commend them enough for how fast they've been doing their work. So it's been great. I have a lot of faith in them. They're going to be able to knock it out at an issue every 4 months here for next year. In regards to the length, with the 8 issues, I would have liked to have told the story in 5 and just have one volume of a graphic novel and say, here's my story, but there's just it just wasn't enough room. I would have had to have trimmed too much content. Sister Mercy at one time was going to be a novel, so I had written a lot of it as a novel. So I converted quite a bit of that into the first couple of issues, although I've gone past that point now. But even in 8 issues, I feel like I'm really rushing the story to get it all told, because it is a bit of an all-encompassing story. And like I said, and if I am lucky enough to be able to go on and write a sequel in the future, that'll be much different. But and the thing I want to keep it unpredictable. I don't want the reader to see where the next issue is going. It's not really, the narrative isn't too spoon fed to them. You might have an idea something is happening when it's going to be going in a totally different direction, but I want to keep every issue new. And like when I said about reaching a sequel, my idea for a sequel, which I got to sit on, is it's so vastly different. I would just love the opportunity to tell it, right? And
even to talk about that
for the rest of my life.
And even to talk about that, keeping it unpredictable, because obviously, for those who don't know, I've gone away from Marvel and DC. I'm only reading 2 DC titles now. I haven't touched a Marvel title in a while. I mean, I've read the first, 4 issues of High Republic. I still buy Marvel, but I don't read a lot of Marvel. I'm reading a lot of independents. I'm reading a lot of places like Dynamite and Dark Horse and Zenoscope. And one of the things that I'm reading a lot of indie books is because DC and Marvel are very predictable at this point. And, I'm getting sick of predictability. Even I'm a big anime fan. Obviously, my name is Pop Anime Comics on Twitter. That should give you an idea. And My Hero Academia is so predictable. And it's like I'm having a hard time watching it. And it's a great show. I'm not knocking it. But I'm looking for something that's unpredictable. And I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Or I'm looking for something that, is vastly different. I love, The Wizard of Oz. And I love Alice in Wonderland. And when people do massive interpretations, Travis Gibb does Cthulhu Invades Oz, and I'm not a Cthulhu guy. I don't know anything about Cthulhu. And I'm like, this is vastly different. And that's what attracted me. And so obviously, what is that like for you saying, hey, whether you recognize it or not, or that was the intention, or you just want to deliver a better product, it is clear to me that people are getting fed up with DC and Marvel and their predictability, and that they're now looking for something saying, hey, if this book in issue 4 goes the way I predicted it, beyond what I should predict it. I mean, look, somebody's obviously going to get it right from issue 3. Somebody is going to throw something out there and it's going to stick to the wall. But the majority of your backers are most likely not going to do that. And I think if they knew where Sister Mercy was going, they might be disappointed and say, I don't want to back it anymore. And it's obviously, I feel like that's changed in the last, 2 years. And so whether you did that intentionally or that was the plan all along, I don't know, but how do you feel about that? Because that's something that's really big right now in comics.
I'm not really big into Marvel and DC at all right now either. I haven't been for a long time. I'm a hardcore Moon Knight fan though, and the new Moon Knight series starts on July the 7th from Marvel, and I think there's like 16 or 20 different covers, and I don't know how many I'm going to get. Probably a dozen if I can. I'll take the bait on that.
You get my predictability position because
absolutely. Absolutely. And I certainly could have done that with Sister Mercy and just have, a rogues gallery and do a new villain every issue and not really advance the story. But that wasn't what I set out to do. It's not a Spider-Man comic where it's going to go 300 issues, right? Like, even if I'm able to write my sequel and, God forbid, actually a third one after that, which I would love to do, that would be where it would have to stop. Because the story cannot go further. I'm not saying it's because she dies or because this or because that, but the story has a very defined beginning and an end, and I just really want to take my time getting there. And again, while trying to avoid, some things are going to be predictable no matter what. You have those story beats, you have the hero's arc and stuff like that. It's just, I guess it's how you handle it, and it's the side stories. You always got your A line and your B line. Somebody might guess exactly what's going on in the A line, but all of a sudden the B line catches them out of the blue, and they didn't call that. So, even if they get a part of it, they're not going to get all of it.
And I could tell you that obviously I read Sister Mercy, the first one. I'm like, oh man, it's great. A nun who is violent and schizophrenic and can hear God. This is awesome because I love the concept. And then obviously I loved how it got very violent very quickly, where I expected it to go a little bit slower and not go as violent as it did. And then issue 3 goes a whole different way. And you have, nudity with nuns, and I'm not complaining. If you've seen the first scene of Californication, or one of the very first scenes, Hank's in a church, and that should give everybody enough information here. I equate Sister Mercy. So obviously, we know where I stand on everything now. But and there goes my career in politics. So anyway. But even telling the story also, because you mentioned that, is that you decided to go from 5 issues to 8. And I like to write short. I love writing short. I used to write a bunch of articles in about 600 words or less and it's a challenge. I also used to work for the government, and the government likes writing short. And I could tell you that writing short is a very, very skilled art. But also sometimes stories can't be told short. And so what is that? I mean, eight issues is not long, but it's obviously significantly longer than 5. Going from, for those who don't know, going from 5 issues to 8 issues is like going from all the way from like night to day, type of thing. And it's a big thing, especially on Kickstarter, because it's an additional 3 Kickstarters you have to run. And so obviously that is something that I think is very important, that you're not choosing to do necessarily 8, but that story dictates that.
It does. And there is, I don't know what the future is going to predict, but I have so many plans. There is a spin-off idea I have for Sister Mercy, but I also have an idea for some one-shot comic books, like you were saying, some short fiction that I would really love to write. I've got 2 ideas in particular that would just be, just a 40-page comic, and that's it. Stories done and told. Whether or not I get to those, I don't know. But yes, and you're right. And writing short is challenging. I'm in a writers group online, and they do the word of the day, where they drop you a word and you have to write 50 words using that word. And sometimes I'll go a little bit too long, and you start cutting it down, and you're cutting it down to the. But sometimes writing is rewriting. The more you edit, usually the better it gets. The shorter you can make it, the less fat there is on the steak.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky though, because sometimes you need that fat, and you also need that character development.
That's right.
And so it's a thin line. And obviously, when I was writing creative articles dealing with comic books, anime, pop culture, wrestling. I was not dealing with necessarily writing a story. And so obviously it's very, very different when you're doing that. And then also I've written articles that have been like 6 pages at the same time, because there's no other way around it. I wrote an entire booking scheme on how to actually book and how something should have been booked. And I wrote 2 articles in that realm where you have to go through all the back history on the article for it to make sense, because legitimately 15 paragraphs all reach into each other, and you're explaining how a wrestling chart goes. So if you ever want a fun exercise, try to go book a wrestling show and come talk to me, because I think every comic writer should go do that. Should go figure out how to book a wrestling show. And once you figure that out, you could write any comic book in the world for a good month, and you have to book 8 shows that all book into each other, and you have to understand where all your characters are at. Oh, what a great exercise. I should get a bunch of comic writers. We should get a whiteboard, and we should just film it. It would be the greatest thing ever.
It's like a baptism by fire. Throw them into the flames when they come out.
I'll make everybody in that group a better writer in an hour.
Right on. There you go. You need to do a TED Talk about that or something.
Oh my god! I'll come out in like a boa. It'd be red and yellow, and I would have a bandana, and I would, get my mustache full and wear a bandana. That has never been done before. I can tell you that.
That's for sure. Right on. That should be your interviewing get up. That would work too. That'll get you some clicks.
It's that, or there's a bunch of stuff. Anyway, though, obviously there's a lot of cool stuff going on with issue 4, and obviously the other stuff I want to talk about is that I do want to talk about the rewards, because that's what people really care about. That's the only thing I really care about too, because I like your cover art with this, and you're going to convince me on which covers I should pick up in a second here, because I'm only getting 3. I'm poor. And we're going to talk about some of those in a second here. But obviously, there is a digital bundle of the basic issues. There's a nude version bundle as well as the regular covers. I like the fact that you have 2 different categories for that, and obviously, I think it's smart to actually distinguish the 2 and charge more money for a digital product. So what prompted that? Because I do like that, and it's extra money. And I like ways that people make extra money with the same product to some degree.
Well, with issue 2, there's actually the standard edition of issue 2 is only 24 pages, and the extreme edition of issue 2 is 28 pages. So they're actually getting more content for their money as well. Although that's only with issue 2. All prior issues have the same page count, all editions, which and all future editions probably will, because in hindsight that turned out to be a bit of a headache. But it goes, again at the extra cover art, and yeah, it seems to be people are really drawn to that, like no doubt about that, and it's such a selling point. I wanted to highlight it as much as I could. Right.
And obviously, and obviously, I'm going to be entering the NFT game sooner or later, either with this or something else with certain episodes, and obviously, or other products as well. And obviously, this is where I think all this is going anyway. And I think this is just a predator and predecessor to that entire thing, because obviously people do like things like this, and people like exclusives, and you are basically creating a digital variant exclusive is what you're doing, and it's super interesting actually. And whether because I don't know if NFTs were a big thing when you first came out with Sister Mercy, but it's the idea that this is somewhat of that idea where it is a digital variant that and people are paying more for it for a reason, and it's actually very, very smart in a lot of ways. And the market is determining that this is where things are going. They'd already determined it with regular comic books, and the digital side of this is brand new.
Yeah, I originally when I started, I tried to walk the line. I wanted to have 2 editions of Sister Mercy. I wanted the one with nudity, the hardcore one that I could, promote to people that were after that. But I also wanted the copy that I could give to my friends and family and my people that I knew that I didn't want, without looking so, like here's my porno mag type of thing, right? I wanted to have it.
I completely am fine with that. What I'm saying is that you created a digital variant, and it's brilliant, and it's such a brilliant concept, because we are in a great digitalization pivot. And what you did, whether knowingly or unknowingly, is that you created basically a whole marketplace on the digital side of saying, hey, you could get better copies digitally, because I completely get the physical side of it, and we're going to get into those in a second here. But I think what you did, and I'm not too sure you realize it, is that you created a whole concept where you basically said, hey, if you want this version of the comic digitally, you have to pay this price because it is better cover art, it is nudity, it is a different cover versus the standard edition. And that, I think, is brilliant, because you're basically saying, hey, you're paying for the art now more, and it might be only $5 more digitally, but you're getting a more exclusive digital product.
$2 more, actually, only. It is, and it is basically, that is exactly what it comes down to, is you are paying more or less for the art. It's you're getting that different cover art, and
I love it. I love it. I think it's brilliant, and this is basically where eventually what you're going to wind up doing if you continue down this path is building NFTs off this. I guarantee you.
I want to keep going with what I'm doing so far has seemed to work for me, so I don't want to deviate it too much. Maybe expand with some other titles, but keep doing it the exact same way.
I think you're going to build an NFT for some of this digital nude art that you got with Sister Mercy. But anyway, let's talk about the regular covers at this point, because we're deviating too much here. Obviously, there is the standard covers. And so I want to show all of them, because we can show pictures here, and pictures are worth 1,000 words. So this is cover A, and this is by Ricardo Silva and Ivan Dominguez. I think I got his last name right. And so obviously this one's cool because it's a wraparound. And obviously cover A's are very important because they sort of set the tone of what the book is. A cover A, for those who don't know, is supposed to sort of say, hey, this is what the book is about. This is what you can expect with it. It's not supposed to be, a pinup or anything like that for the most part. So what's the deal with cover A? Because I also like the fact that it's a wraparound. So if somebody says, hey, look, I just want the cover A, it's a pretty cool book considering it's a wraparound. And so, and it gives an idea of what Sister Mercy is about. Because when you look at, this book, you get a sense of what's going to happen.
As I'm sure you're about to elaborate on every issue, I like to hire a wide variety of different artists to bring in something. But with every issue, cover A is always going to be Ricardo's, the interior artist, Ricardo Silva. He gets the cover A. I always feel like the person who draws the interior should also have the main cover, right? So It's and with this one here, we wanted to show that basically this issue isn't going to be as easy for Sister Mercy, and you know, and it's show the threat pretty much right off the bat.
And I also like that it's a wraparound, because wraparounds are nice. You know, you don't have to
wraparound cover too.
And for those who don't know, typically wraparounds sometimes are more expensive in regular comics, and it's always nice when, you know, it's like, this is the cover A, this is the standard cover, and it's a nice wow factor, and that you know, see what this is going to be about, and you get a sense immediately what this story is about. And so I really like the fact that you chose to do the wraparound, and that because it is a little bit more expensive, I would imagine, to produce a wraparound.
Yeah, and that was actually Ricardo's idea, so all credit to him on that one.
And also, it's issue 4 too. So in many ways, people who've been following from issue 1 are like, oh, now that I'm backing every single Kickstarter, you know, that you've done, you know, this is in many ways a thank you to people, and it also adds value, because there's a saying, you have to be the most expensive, the least expensive, or the most valuable, and this is a way to add value. And I feel that, you know, when I'm backing, you know, your Kickstarter, you know, if you just did a standard cover and you're going to charge me $15 and it's not a wow factor, you know, it makes me think twice about backing people's Kickstarters. And there's people's Kickstarters who I'm friends with, and I was not happy with their reward tiers and all that stuff, and even their covers, and it was like $15-20 for a standard cover, and I'm like, yeah, this wasn't valuable. And the book was okay, it wasn't phenomenal. And so that's something that I feel like this sort of does that, and it says, hey, you know, I'm going to give a wraparound. It's very important, I feel, to add value, and this is just one way how to do it.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful cover. I really love it. The Ivan's coloring with Ricardo's art they complement each other so much. It's just
and that sun is very, very nice. Like the sunset, I think it is, or the sun setting, really just pops out. It pops out.
Yeah, I love that myself.
And then obviously cover B, which I'm going to be picking up cover B, and then I don't know the other 2 covers that I'm going to be picking up. Obviously, I like this cover a lot. Obviously, I used it on Facebook when I was inviting everybody to the event. Obviously, Paul Anderson. I don't know as much of Paul's work as I need to know, but obviously I like this one because it's kind of cool with her on the stake, obviously sticking with the theme of the entire thing. And obviously she's up at the stake, and, well, it's not going to be as easy. But I just love how she looks so angelic.
See, I love this picture myself. This is actually one of the very first commissions that was ever drawn of Sister Mercy back, I think, 8 years ago. And I'm so happy to have finally reached the point in the story where it applies, because this is actually a scene from some of the later on in the comic. And so, yeah, I've just been dying to use this cover. I absolutely love it.
So I'm curious now. So this was actually a commissioned piece?
Yes. Yeah, a long time ago. And it's actually this
how that happened. Explain the story, because this is super interesting now.
Okay, well, no, it was I was working with my good friend Doran Corkum, who you're about to interview next.
8:30, guys. 8:30.
Yeah.
He shows up.
Yeah,
he shows up.
And
we don't jinx it.
Yeah, no, Paul.
Preemptively. Fingers crossed.
If you can trust anybody by their word, you can trust him. Trust me. But no, yeah, Paul was working for him, and I was working with Doran together at the time. He was helping me with Sister Mercy. None of Sister Mercy would have been possible without Doran's help. He was such an influence and gave me so much knowledge that I've been able to use. The whole adage, you know, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll eat forever. That's basically what he's done with helping me learn what I need to do with Sister Mercy. But Paul had seen Sister Mercy and had asked actually if he could draw a picture, and this was the end result. And I've always loved it. It was to me, this harkens back to the Joan of Arc being burned at the stake, and here we have Sister Mercy being surrounded by zombies. So sort of alluding back to the Joan of Arc story as well.
And I love the fact that you know, you have somebody who's drawing something, and then you actually get to incorporate it, and then it gets put onto a Kickstarter, and then it's obviously a cover B. And I love that story. You know, there's a commission.
I'm sorry,
what were you saying?
I always knew this scene was coming. Like it was always, that was one of the very first scenes that I envisioned when I first started writing the story. Like this was one of the first scenes right off the bat.
And so what is that like too, that, you know, you have this scene in your head, somebody does a commission, and then finally you're like, I know where we're going to fit this in now. I know exactly where we're going to fit it in, because I'm sure that there's plenty of artists that you go to a con and that you can say, hey, you're not going to get my top 10 favorite artists to draw something, but, you know, not everything they're going to draw is going to be applicable to be put into the comic or even used as a cover, despite it being awesome artwork. And it's kind of a cool thing when somebody says, hey, I'm going to draw something, and you actually get to use it. It's very cool in that regard, because, you know, I've gotten comic commissions and I've gotten sketches. I don't know if you've gotten comic sketches at conventions, but not everything somebody does for you is usable as a cover. It's very rare.
That's for sure. Been there. I've actually paid top dollar for a few pieces that were in the end unusable, that were intended to be covers, that I just paid the artist, said thank you for your work, and put it aside. It just wasn't salvageable, right?
No, it's not salvageable yet. We're going to make sure it gets salvageable. I promise. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. I have 15 ideas in my head. But anyway, but we're going to digress right there, because I don't want to ruin anything for the 9th Kickstarter with Sister Mercy.
There we go.
And then there's going to be a 10th Kickstarter with Sister Mercy too, and possibly an 11th while we're at it.
Who knows?
I'm going to just start running all your Sister Mercy campaigns. You know, I'm going to make you a career out of Sister Mercy.
I'm down. That's my goal. That's my goal.
You're going to get so sick of Sister Mercy by the time we're done. Take it away from me. Take it away.
I think my girlfriend will probably get sick of her first. She's sick of hearing me talking about her. She was asleep the other night when I'm like, oh my God, I have a great idea. And I just started splurting out, and I was like, I had to run and write it down. I was like, I can't forget this. And she's just half asleep. You know, yeah, that's great, babe.
and then obviously this cover too is cover C. It's censored. You know, it won't be censored that way unless you would like it to be, and I'm sure you would just happily draw a Sharpie over somebody's book if they asked that.
Yeah, I can put my autograph there if they want. I can sign the nipples.
And so obviously this is very similar to that Paul Anderson, slightly different, you know, obviously less zombies, different color. Obviously she's nude. It's a little bit of a different pose, but it's sort of in a similar theme to that cover B, but obviously it's nude. And this is the nude cover of the bunch.
Yeah, and it's Ricardo's take on Paul's work, right? And this one again colored by Sanju Navangoon, sorry, who also colored the Mike Chrome piece on my issue 3 Kickstarter.
Him and Mike Chrome have known each other for a long, long time.
You see their names together.
Sanju is from Zenescope, for those who don't know. He's done a lot of work for Zenescope, a lot of coloring work. So he's been very, very prominent now and starting to appear a lot more on the indie scene. So that
I actually just got comics in the mail the other day. Gretel from Zenescope I ordered. That looks great.
You ordered what?
Gretel?
Oh, I like Gretel by Ben Mears.
Yeah, the art was just caught me, and I've always loved the Hansel and Gretel story. That was the one story that I pulled from my childhood that always clung to me right into adulthood. So I absolutely had to get that.
Oh, I also have been an expert on that graphic novel, so I wrote a very good review on it. And
I only got the first issue of the comic was all I got, and but I definitely want more. I want more for sure. I love it. The artwork is so beautiful.
Good. So good. It's so good. It's not even that expensive as a graphic novel. It's like $20.
Right on. I didn't even know it was available as a graphic novel yet, actually. So that's again, you're expanding my reading list quite a bit now.
I'm not too sure. It might even be on Comixology. So you can read it digitally. I have no idea though. And then obviously cover D. And this one's cool, and obviously we're dealing with somewhat of what I am presuming is the enemy of Sister Mercy in this issue.
It is. That is. And that's art by lines by Walter I'll probably totally mess this up. Figueroa. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
I mean, your memory's phenomenal. Your memory's phenomenal in this.
And the coloring by Gwinnell Dalago. She colors for Marvel right now. I absolutely love her coloring, and it's so gratifying to have an artist who's worked on Marvel, that's done coloring for, and is currently coloring for Marvel, to have done one of my comics. It's just that's a feather in my cap. Just one off the bucket list.
And so one of the nice things is that obviously this is the Fire Dane, and we're seeing what he's doing, and obviously we get the oil, stuff going on, and I'm presuming that those are oil rigs. They look like oil rigs, and so obviously we get that going on with it, and then we also get some cool stuff going on with it, and so it's kind of cool because this is also a very topical, scene and thing that is going on with her and her enemy, and it's kind of nice when you have a bad guy on a cover, and I like that in many ways.
And this issue is also slightly influenced by Dante's Inferno, Dante Alighieri. I quote him on the opening page, so it's that's where the name the Dane comes from. It's basically Dante without the T, the Dane, and it worked. Right, so that I didn't realize until after the fact. I'm like, well, he looks a little bit like Bane, and now the names are a bit similar, so that kind of burned me a little bit, but that's all right.
And then the final cover I want to talk about is cover E, and obviously, I'm not even gonna attempt. It's Marco D. Archangelis or something of that nature. I obviously am not going to attempt, but very angelic piece, which is funny because that's his last name to some degree. So not to make fun of people's names, but it's very ironic that this is a very angelic piece in a lot of ways. It's got a very photorealistic feel to it, a very surreal feel to it. It looks almost action figure like to some degree. You can make, and it's a cool cover, and I like this cover a lot as well. I obviously love cover B, and I love cover E in many ways as well.
Yeah, I came across Marco I've seen some of his 3D digital art on Facebook, and like you said, photorealistic, and some of it was great, and he happened to do one of a nun. And I thought, well, now that just works out perfectly. So I reached out to him, and he was happy. I believe this is his first comic book cover, actually. And and I do, and I absolutely love that cover for sure.
And so what is that like? Because this is something that obviously I like ArtStation, and I find people all the time. Obviously, I'm on Facebook. I'm part of a lot of comic groups. I throw up a signal, but then again, I also just go on Kickstarter and just browse endlessly. I go on Instagram. People recommend people to me, and I'm looking for new talent all the time. And then obviously I'm exposed to places like Zenoscope, and then you get into certain companies, and then they lead you in certain ways down a road. But for you, it's different because you have people that I've never heard of. I never heard of Marco, and I'm the first person to admit it. And I have a feeling that a lot of other people on the Kickstarter backing Sister Mercy haven't heard of Marco either, and they might not have heard of Paul Anderson and a few other people. And so what is that like when you're finding artists and cover artists and people to do things for your books? Because obviously, where do you go? Because I have my place. I go to ArtStation, go to DeviantArt, I go on Facebook groups, and I get recommendations from enough people. I've been doing this, I think by the end of tomorrow, I would have done in the last year, I think almost 170. In the last 2 years, 170 interviews. And most of them have been indie comic creators and people in the indie sector collectively. So, but how do you go find people? Because obviously you want to introduce people to something that's different.
I usually scroll through the Facebook groups, but I'm in a very, very wide variety of groups. And if I remember correctly, I found Marco I think it was in some art appreciation group or something like that, like sci-fi art and horror appreciation or something to that effect. And he had just put up a few of his digital pieces. He wasn't looking for commissions or work, just kind of sharing what he does. And I was so impressed that I reached out to him, and I'm very, very happy that I did in order to get that cover, right? But I usually scroll through the groups, and I see an artist whose work stands out for me, then I can't help but reach out to them. But I also get a large influx of messages from other artists as well that you know, that are looking for work, sometimes wanting to draw Sister Mercy, right? So it's I have a long list of artists I would like to work with. That's for sure. That's for sure. It's hard keeping the limit down to 4 or 5 issues. I would actually like to do like 10 issues if I could, but I think that's going a little bit overboard.
Yeah, that's a big issue. I know people who have like 40 covers, and there is something called load. It's also, you know, buying
Unless
40 covers.
Comics, that's too much.
Yeah, it's the idea that also it's like, you know, unless you're doing 80 grand or 100 grand on a Kickstarter, you do not need 40 covers. And even if you are doing 100,000, you still don't need 40 covers. I think like having 10 covers is a lot.
Yes, actually, I even thought 5 was a lot. I only intended to go for 4, and but then I came across Marco, and I had to get that in there as well. But that being said, to the guys that do you know, 10 and plus covers, all the power to them if that's what they want to do, and if that works for them, that's great. But speaking for myself and for Sister Mercy, that would just be overkill. I don't, you know, it was as much as I would love to do it. So we'll pace them all out so I have somebody new to work with every issue.
Yeah, and look, you know, I'm not knocking anybody's business because, again, I'm not a Kickstarter. I've never run a Kickstarter. Obviously, you know, I just would imagine for myself that it would be ludicrous unless the intention is to purposely do it, which if I ever do run a Kickstarter, you know, and I have an idea, I want like 100 covers, and it's going to be savage, and the whole point is that it's to prove a point. The fact that I do 100 covers is part of the project's point. That's a different. The project is complete satire. I'm letting everybody know that my idea is complete satire. Everybody is going to hate me after it is done. Nobody will want to work with me. My show will be officially over when it hits, and everybody will hate me because I will have raised millions of dollars on Kickstarter in the stupidest way possible. And people will be like, I wish I thought of that, and I could have done that too, but you didn't. So anyhow, but I'll be rich. So it's okay.
Or you'll have a lot of comic books.
Rich. But I digress right there. Obviously, there's some other stuff that I want to throw out there. There's a big box of comics, and there's some other stuff too. I think a bunch of this stuff comes with, you know, prints as well with a lot of these books. And so there's just a bunch of things. I think, is there original page art, or is that something else that you're offering? And a variety of other things are out there. And I'm really lazy because I completely forgot like half the reward.
There's original cover art. 3 of the covers were in there, but they've all been claimed already, so they're gone. And as well as commissions by Ricardo, they're gone. The last stretch goal, or that is just about unlocked, and I haven't looked at it lately. It could even be unlocked now. I think I was $80 Canadian away from unlocking it. It's going to be a prize draw. Again, I'm giving away 5 original pages from previous issues to anybody that's backed any tier that has all accrued stretch goals in it, right? And also,
so stretch goals are cool because these are for everybody. It's a sticker, a trading card, a magnet, obviously drawing for some page art. I know that you did that the last time too, right?
Yeah, people responded very well to that, so I thought I would do that again. They were really happy about the prize draw. And though there are a few less stretch goals this time than in the previous campaign, I'm not specifically sure what yet, but I'm going to be dropping little extras into everybody's packages just to make up for the shipping in Canada is a bit higher than the US, and it's been an absolute nightmare to try to work around it.
Let's talk about that, because obviously I want to table that because that's actually something that I do want to talk about. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about the add-ons, because that's another cool feature now on Kickstarter. And I'm assuming you're participating in Kickstarter's awesome rollout of it. And I don't mean that facetiously. I think Kickstarter's done an amazing job with their add-on feature. I think they have long overdue.
It's very difficult though. Like, you could very easily mess yourself up with the shipping very bad, especially if you're shipping internationally.
I don't want to talk about the shipping. I want to talk about the add-on.
No, but it ties in specifically to the add-on.
How many times do I have to go through this? I understand as an eBay seller what shipping looks like. I don't ship internationally because it is a headache. I did it once. I do not want to do it again.
And 95% of my backers are international, so I don't have much
You
choice
should move to
on
the
it.
United States. It's an easy solution.
I'm not going to say the thought hasn't crossed my mind. You know, I would, or at the very least, find a third-party shipper out of the States. There's got to be a way to that piece of the puzzle has yet to be found, but I'm going to look into that.
But
so there's definitely a solution to be found there, because that when I do my issue
you're back. You're back.
Oh, I think you're lagging out.
Or maybe you're not back.
Okay. Sorry, my internet gets a bit wonky.
I live in Connecticut, so I have really shitty internet.
It's here too. The last podcast I did a few days ago, my internet crashed out because we were having a storm outside, but it's clear today, so it should be better.
Well, I'm in storm territory right now, so it's probably me. But even to talk about, because we're going to get to the shipping. We're going to get to the shipping, because I know 95% of your backers are in the U.S., but I do want to make it crystal clear that you get out on posters, all the back issues, some other cool stuff with Sister Mercy. So if you missed, issue 2 and you need issue 2, you could add that on. And so obviously you could get issue 4.
That's right.
Or if you have issue 1 and you missed issues 2 and 3, you could add all that stuff on. You could add posters on. There's some other cool stuff you could add. The nude variant, I think, from issue 3 could be added on, and some other stuff too. And obviously, I don't want to go into the detail. I'm sure that everybody, when they back the project, can figure out what they want to add on. And Kickstarter's made it very, very easy to do that at this point, whether you're doing it right after you backed it or before you pay and the pledge is collected. You could do it that way too. And so there's 2 opportunities to add stuff on. But obviously I do want to talk about shipping. So as I stated, I'm an eBay seller. I sell a lot of comics. I sell a lot of Pop Funkos. I ship a lot of stuff out. I ship, trading cards out too. And so I only deal with the United States because I don't want to deal with international shipping. I could tell you for a fact, the United States Post Office has had 2 post hike rake ups in the last 9 months, which is a lot. I charge $10 shipping on average. I break even on my shipping. I sometimes lose $1 here, and sometimes I make $1 here. But when I'm shipping out 20 items a month, I charge $10 flat and I break even. Now, obviously, you're shipping to the U.S. And so obviously shipping is kind of crazy. And I understand that the Canadian dollar is weaker than the U.S. dollar right now, and that helps from a U.S. standpoint. But even still, it is expensive. Your shipping to me was like $21 for Sister Mercy 3, and I had no problem paying it. But that's why I'm getting 3 variants, not 1. I'm going bigger with your Kickstarter, and I'm actually thinking about it. And so obviously, what is that like? Because it is expensive, shipping. And it's a pain in the ass. And also what people don't understand, I'm going to say this again, because I had Dawn Mateague on, or Mateague, from Zenoscope, and she's got Divinica going on, or had it going on. And I explained with JP Roth, really cool interview. But I said, hey, use your credit card, not your debit card. Because most debit cards charge a 3% fee if it's international.
Oh, okay.
A credit card does not. And that's a big thing. And so one of the things that I'm telling people in Canada, if 95%, put that up on your Kickstarter saying, use your credit card, not your debit card, because this way it will save you 3%, because 3% on $100 is $3.
Right. Okay.
And it sounds crazy that, we're talking $3, but if you back 10 projects from Canada spending $100,
it adds up.
No, adds up quick.
It's it's for sure. And where I have to use Canada Post, which seems to be way more expensive than U.S. Post. So I just got a Kickstarter that I backed in the mail here last week, which would have been this one right here, and it has a sticker on it, $3.50. So if I went right back, if I didn't open this up and I just went right back to the post office and mailed it back to the people that mailed it to me, it would be $12. Right? That's how much that costs to ship that out of Canada. So our shipping fees are high. but it is just to cover the cost. And then when you start getting into the nightmare world of add-ons, right? So it costs the same thing to ship one comic as it does to ship 3. But as soon as you ship 3 plus stretch goals, it seems to put it up into that next weight class, right? So it's so hard to, you don't know if somebody's going to add on 1 issue. You don't know if they're going now from 1 comic to 2 comics or from 3 comics to 4 comics. And there's such a drastic price jump. And that's all without tracking. So what I do here now, for example, one of the backers in Australia from issue 3 contacted me recently, never received his comics. So I did him up another package, and this time I sent it with tracking, and it was $57, right? So I took a hit on that one. At the end of the day, he got his comics, and that's the most important thing. But it's the shipping fees out of Canada are just absolutely astronomical. So by the time the next issue rolls around, I hope I have figured out a way around that, because I feel like it's really hindering our success as well, that we would have a lot more comics out there, a lot more backers. I would rather see more backers than more dollars. I want to have comics in people's hands. I want people talking about Sister Mercy, and the lower the shipping I can get it, the more I can get out there. So for the next issue, we're definitely going to look into that. I've heard about third-party shippers in the States that basically you send them all of your comics and your stretch goals, and they will supply everybody from the US. However, right now I'm waiting on 5 or 6 different Kickstarters that are late, and the excuse is third-party shipper problem. So that kind of makes me hesitate to go in that direction.
One story that people will test, and I'm not blaming Ryan Brown or Charles Soule, is that they used the third-party shipper, and that was a nightmare. That was a nightmare, and they realized it was a nightmare, and it was bad. And they were very apologetic. I got my stuff, but it took a while. And I could tell you right now, from a Kickstarter perspective, I think there's like 12 Kickstarters I'm still waiting on, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to get them.
I got about a dozen as well that I'm waiting on.
And so and some of them I'm wondering if they're ever going to hit as well, and ship out, just because I know certain things that other people don't know, and that I'm not going to talk about, but I know certain situations going on with certain people, and there are Kickstarters that I've backed in December that are supposed to be here by April, and they haven't been, and I'm like, what's going on, guys? Like,
I might have been on some of them same campaigns, because I have the same. Yes, I'm waiting for some from those dates as well.
And so obviously it's very interesting, and that kind of leads me into this: is that where do you think even crowdfunding is going? Because there's a lot of discussion about where it's going. Obviously, big names coming in. I'm getting into the wholesale market. Obviously Keanu Reeves, Berserk, and I know we spoke about it. I just bought a bunch of Berserk books for my eBay business, about 10 of them, the foil covers that I'm going to be speccing on. And so obviously there's a lot of stuff that's sort of about to happen, but I think it's safe to say that because I'll give some statistics, and this came from Tom Hutchinson, from Big Dog Inc., and he threw out this idea. And what he said is that in 2020, there were more projects on Kickstarter and more funding was occurring. And now in 2021, there's less projects on and there's less funding. And if that's the case, that means that, obviously my economic solution and my thought process was wrong, because I thought if there was more projects, there'd be less funding because there's more competition. And if there's less projects, there'd be more because there's less competition. And so obviously more competition, I think things are going to fail more. Apparently that's not the case from what he was explaining to me. And so
I think it's more of a rising tide raises all ships type of thing.
And so this goes into what I'm saying, where if a Scott Snyder, a Keanu Reeves, a Jeff Lemire, and 4 other big names come in every 3 years to raise everybody's thing up, that's abnormal. And that is not the norm, first thing. And obviously people on Kickstarter can't depend on that. And they have to say, well, we have to continue to go do things like we're doing here and continue to build our fan base. And then, well, if a rising tide comes up every 3 years, we benefit from that in a short term. But then if that happens on my issue 5, I can't expect the same result for issue 6.
Right. Yeah, no, that's the first I've heard those numbers. I wasn't aware, in the decline in Kickstarter this year compared to last year. It's actually surprising. It's disheartening. I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's a blip on the radar. Um, I think you had asked me that question the last time you interviewed me as well, and I had said I had remarked on Keanu Reeves and how bringing more people to Kickstarter and that crowdfunding was just growing and growing. So that was my impression as where it was at. I thought it was still growing. So actually, it comes as a bit of a surprise to me.
I think a bunch of people owe me an apology. A lot of people disagreed with me. And I'll explain why I thought what I thought. I saw it on the radar. There's this person called Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know if people know who she is. I'm being facetious. And she came into WWE. She was the hottest thing. And when she came in, I was one of the people that said, this is going to backfire. Right now, WWE's women's division is a fucking train mess and makes abortion look clean. And I don't say this lightly. I don't. I say this because everybody who's going to listen to this is getting it. Their women's division is a mess because she left, Becky Lynch left, Charlotte Flair is not doing anything, and then you have Sasha and Bayley, the four horsewomen, and you had a solid women's division, and your top three stars left for a while, and now Charlotte's back, but there's no oomph because Ronda, when she left, basically left a huge void, and that's what I feel about Scott Snyder and Keanu Reeves is they left a huge void, and this is what happens. And everybody's like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I said they had a right to be there, but I said this is a consequence. And when I said it, and there's videos of me saying this, nobody believed me, and look where we are right now. And now nobody's laughing because everybody's like, oh, this is going to be the new norm, and apparently it's not. And so that's my point.
That's interesting. No, that's very interesting. So the next time you do see a big name come in with a Kickstarter, you're probably going to see a major influx of other people with campaigns jumping on the boat at the same time, I would suspect.
I have no problem with it, and that's the behavior that has to ensue, and that's a strategy, but that's not an influence strategy. That is a reactionary strategy. So obviously, it's very, very interesting, that realm and what that's presenting. So obviously, I mean, I'm curious how you view it because I have a view, and then obviously I'm more in the business side of things. Obviously, I'm getting into the wholesale business side on indie comics, on mainstream comics, and a variety of other things. So I see this very differently than everybody else sees it. I see people's comics as products. I do not see them anymore as a creative. I see parts of it as creative. Like I read Sister Mercy, and I enjoy it. But I'm also an investor. I'm also a businessman. I'm also interested in wholesaling a lot of books, and I'm picking and choosing what I want. So I view things very differently now than other people do. And this is how I view this: is that it's a business. And I view it from a business perspective on what's hot and what's going to possibly make me a quick buck or long bucks.
Right. Well, you'll be happy to hear this is not necessarily an answer to your question, but it relates to what you're saying. Is that in the future, after this issue, I'm looking into rebranding everything. So everybody that's backed issues 1, 2, 3, or 4, all of those are going to be limited. There will be no more prints with the CWH comics. Issue 1 is being recolored so that I can have the same colorist do all 4 copies, so that is more uniform, because issue 1 originally had a different colorist. So it's actually definitely going to help with the resale value of anybody that had backed the first 4 campaigns, because once issue 5 comes on and further, all the back issues will look entirely different. So inadvertently, everything became a limited run, which I wasn't expecting to do. But no, in regards to the Kickstarter thing, no, that was like I said, I had thought that it was at the top of its game. I didn't realize that it was starting to recede a little bit, and never gave it any thought into what you were saying about leaving a void. And it definitely sounds like that could very well be what happened for sure. But no, it's that's some interesting information, that's for sure.
And obviously, I mean, this can go a huge thing, and at some point, I'm going to have a bunch of you guys on, you and a few other people, and I think a bigger conversation needs to ensure, because obviously, I think from an education standpoint, beyond that, but that's a whole rabbit hole that I don't want to get into. I'll also probably wind up alienating a bunch of people, and I'm going to get a bunch of people who might agree and disagree with me. And I'm the perfect person to do it, because I'm not a Kickstarter guy, which makes this even better, which makes me the perfect authority on it.
Absolutely.
And then I'll launch my presidential campaign right after on air. But anyhow,
shouldn't be hard.
It'll be wonderful. I'll be the first, podcasting president. Oh, it'll be great. But to even go further into this, and I do want to talk about cons. Cons are opening up in the U.S. I don't know what they look like in Canada, and obviously a lot of stuff's sort of going on in the world. And we were speaking about this also before, and I mentioned a friend, Travis Gibb, and I'm contractually obligated to mention him and everything. So go buy his merch too. And go back to Cthulhu Invades Oz digitally because it's a really hard book to find physically. But he was at a con, and what he was saying is that a lot of people are a lot tighter with their money right now. And obviously they're buying what's on their collecting list, but they're not buying anything beyond their collecting list. And they're not being very, spending heavy, where they're sort of buying what they need on the first day and then they're done. And then sales for days 2 and 3 of a con are rougher. And so a lot of sales happen on that first day, on that Friday. People get what they want, and then they know exactly what they're looking for. And so where do you think cons are going? Opening up, how they're going to be conducted, and then even going further, monetarily, because obviously if you're an indie creator, you need to make money. If you're a vendor, you need to make money. If you're a celebrity, you need to make money. And if you're not making any money, you're losing money, and then the con has to make money too. And if nobody's making any money, or half the con's making money, it's not a healthy con.
The cons here in Canada, I think Canada is a little bit further behind than the U.S. and with the reopening of everything. As far as I know, at least there's been no cons here. I was originally scheduled to bring Sister Mercy issue 2 to the East Coast Comic Con, which is the largest one on East Coast Canada, and that hasn't happened yet. And so I actually haven't done a con. I did one back when Sister Mercy was in its infantile stages before the issue 1 launch in Ottawa, which was great. But then obviously the world situation changed, and I just can't wait to get back to a con with Sister Mercy. So I don't really have a lot to say on it because I have no experience with it, right? Before or after. So it's I'm definitely eager for them to open. That's about all that I can say, and I don't know what to experience. I'm sure with the social distancing and whatever other standards they have in place, it'll be a bit of a nightmare, but it'll be an interesting time when the time does come, whenever that is.
Fair enough. And the way I see it is that I don't know when I'm going back to a con either. My last con experience was rough. I just had a very bad experience, and then everything happened. And so obviously I had an experience, I think in 2019, and I was going to be doing a bunch of stuff. And then where COVID broke out, and I was informed like 2 weeks before. No, I was informed like a week before I was supposed to do a panel that kind of canceled the thing, which I was happy about because I didn't want to go at that point. I didn't want to go because I didn't feel comfortable, which is understandable. In the middle of April of 2020, I didn't want to go to a con. I don't know about anybody else, but I wasn't so gung-ho on it. And then I haven't gone since, and I don't know when I'm going to be going back. I might go back in 2022 when things are more stable, both in the entire con world as well as in my personal life. I just moved back home with my parents, so I have first world problems and not third world problems to deal with, and I got put out my fire in my house first and foremost. And
I hope they're okay with the Sister Mercy fridge magnet.
That too. That'll work perfectly fine for me. But even this idea that I think that's where I stand on the issues, that I have a lot of stabilization, and also I don't want to go to a con and have no merch that I want there and spend $90 for a ticket. And have
Absolutely.
half the celebrities I want to see there, have half the comic creators I want to see there, have CGC not there. Like there's a variety of things that have to be at a con to make it attractive for me. And if 60% of that stuff isn't there, there's no point in me being there. And that's the holdup, is that if CGC is not taking any signing gradings, I'm now not going to go get comic books signed and pay for those signings. And now I'm not a good customer. And also, I'm not a good customer as far as getting a product I want, and the con's not giving me the product I want, and then I'm not happy because the whole point is that I want to get my comic book signed and graded by person X, or I want a commission that's graded, not necessarily for value, but to preserve it. And then all of a sudden, if that isn't delivered to me, there's no point in me being at a con. So until certain things are put back into place, and certain companies want to be back there, and certain creators want to be back there, and that, I can go get a book graded, which is my sole purpose of being at a convention, and for cool merch and cool exclusives, there's no point in me going. And that's how I feel about it.
Well, it's a lot. Cons are expensive, right? So, I mean, they're expensive no matter what. So you definitely want to make sure there's going to be something there that you're going to want to get your money's worth out of. Like you said, you don't want to spend $90 for a ticket and just walk around and walk back out, right? And myself, I'm looking forward to getting into the con since Sister Mercy has grown so much. It's like I will leap probably at the first opportunity as soon as they're open.
You want people to be there, meaning that if only 500 people are going to be there, you might not be so ready to jump in. You might want to go to a con that might have 10,000 people or have 5,000 people.
But even if there's only 500, I mean, and absolutely, and you're 100% correct. But even if there's only 500, I'll be 501. Right? I'll reach out wherever I can.
You get what I'm saying. I think if you get what I'm saying is that it has to be attractive. Meaning, if they're going to charge you $3,000 for a table for 500 people there, that makes no economic sense.
Oh, absolutely. No, for sure.
And that's the other thing too, is that I think it also has to be attractive, meaning that if you only have 1,500 people at a con, but you're only charging $150 for a table, that's fine. Or if it's 500 people and you're charging $100 for a table, that's great. But if you're charging $1,000 for a table for half the volume, that's when it becomes a problem, I feel. And it's going to be very interesting.
Those numbers are even inconceivable to me because I'm used to small town Canada, right? Like the biggest Comic-Con on the East Coast that I'm waiting for, I think it was like $250 for the table, right? So it's really not a major expenditure. Thinking thousands of dollars for a table, I mean, I'm sure it would be if you're looking at obviously a San Diego Comic-Con or something massive that's actually put on by the Comic-Con group. Yeah, for sure.
There are cons that cater to 40,000 people, and those table prices go up. And so obviously, as you go up, even if you were to go to a con that had 10,000 people, the table price is not going to be $250. It's right. More expensive. So obviously, as you grow, that's where it's going. But again, small cons are fun. I love small cons. I've had a blast at small cons.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much been all of my experience has been, well, like I said, that one in Ottawa seemed large to me, but it would probably be a small con to you. I have no doubt.
I go to small cons all the time, but that's not the point. That's another different conversation at some point we'll have to. But obviously, I got to get running to my next interview in like 10 minutes. But I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote. Obviously, where can people find you? On Facebook. I know you got a Sister Mercy page. I've been promoting it heavy. I'm going to continue to promote it heavy. I'm going to promote this interview out. Obviously, I know that I think you have a Twitter. I know you think you have an Instagram to some degree. Obviously, Kickstarter is where people can back the project. Please buy me a coffee. I am broke, and if you like indie stuff, back the Kickstarter if you got the money. I was going to throw that out there, but also buy me a coffee. I love coffee and totally appreciate everybody who does that. So please go do that for me if you can.
Coffee.
It's in the link, guys. It's in the link. So just click every single one of those links and just throw everybody like $10 at every single link. In fact, give me your credit card and I'll take what I need. I like that idea. So you send me your credit card. I'll take what I need. Then I'll pass it to Corey. He'll take what he needs. And then you'll get the bill and you'll pay it. It works. Not you, Corey, not me, but the person who gives us their credit card. I mean, it's the simplest way how to do this.
That sounds like a great business plan. Right on.
But in all seriousness, where can people find you?
So, people can find Sister Mercy on Facebook and on Instagram. And obviously, as been said, there's a Kickstarter running. Just past 300 backers. It's been our most successful Kickstarter so far. Very, very grateful for everyone that backed. And one last comment on this in the shipping. We try to throw a few extra things in with the comics to make up for the shipping. We want to make sure that everybody feels like they've got their money's worth and they're happy with it.
Yeah, and I'll say this, the stretch goals from issue 3 were great, and there was a lot of cool stuff in that. It came pretty good, no damage. I was very happy with it. So obviously you shipped very well, and those extras are always good, and stretch goals are always fun. So I obviously backed issue 3. I wish I backed issues 1 and 2. Obviously, I would have appreciated that. I'm gonna have to go pick up some issues 1 and 2, so I could have a complete set and throw that up on my Instagram at some point. But obviously, having said all that, and I'm joking when give me your credit card. I want to make that crystal clear before I get into trouble. But in all seriousness, you have to support indie. That means that you have to back Kickstarters. You have to, if people have links for products or other things, myself included, I got to buy me a coffee for a reason. You have to support indie, and you have to support indie that you like and that you appreciate. It goes a long way. Obviously, I'm encouraging everybody. Sister Mercy is an amazing comic. I thoroughly enjoy it, and it's not that bad. You can just back it digitally. It goes a long way. But if you are in a situation and buying me a coffee, you could throw me $1, and I would greatly appreciate it. It goes a long way. $1 or $100. Both those things go a long way. But even going further off of this, and I know money is tight, the best thing that you can do beyond money, and even more important than money, is actually share content. So sharing that Kickstarter is super important. Liking the Sister Mercy page, super important. Liking this page, very important. Sharing this interview is super important at this point, because all this stuff goes a long way, and you don't know who's watching. And when you share things, you don't know who that is going to reach. You could put this, Kickstarter up on your personal page, and you have friends who are into comics. All of a sudden they're like, hey, this comic looks really cool. I love this artwork. I'm going to now back that project. And you just don't know. And you might say, oh, I'm not doing much. But I know plenty of people who have been exposed. And you, with Lori Foster, was a perfect example of that, where you saw that interview that I conducted with her, and like, oh, I just backed this project. And I think you backed the project live, and that was just an interview, and I didn't even share that anywhere. And that, imagine if I actually, when I started to share that, who saw that and backed that project. So it goes a long way. And it is.
And I've backed several projects that I've found the exact same way, just people sharing them. And when I back them, I usually add the note, that's why you should share. Like, awesome job. Thank you. Right? It makes a massive difference. And
so on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
The final word. Well, thank you to any of the backers that are already out there that have already backed. If not, there's still plenty of time to get back on board. Sister Mercy's still going to be running for 3 more weeks. I want to thank Andrew Davis for another great interview. One of my favorite interviewers. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Facebook or Kickstarter.
And obviously you can do the same with me. I'm very much botherable, on this page and on a bunch of other pages. And if you have any questions for Corey, you can just send them to me too. I don't know if I'll answer correctly, but I'm more than happy to answer those questions for Corey anytime. About Sister Mercy too. And yes, she's not a real person.
That's right. And if you're tuned in now, stay tuned. The next interview is going to be great. I happen to personally know the guy that's coming on board.
Well, on that note, that is a wrap.